Coronation Street teases that danger creeps once again into the cobbled streets of Weatherfield, casting long shadows over lives that had only just begun to piece themselves together. Mick's escape from prison sends shockwaves across the community, tearing open wounds that had not yet healed and unraveling threads of fragile stability that had held broken families together. It began on an unusually grey morning. The air was thick with anticipation, and the silence inside the prison walls was eerily unnatural. Mick sat quietly on the edge of his cot, hands clasped tightly, knuckles pale. Months of introspection had etched hollows under his eyes, but they couldn't erase the ferocity that still smoldered beneath. Rumors had filtered through the prison grapevine, a transfer, a weakening of protocols, a gap to be exploited. He was no longer the same man who had walked into those walls in chains. Time had dulled the reckless violence, but sharpened the singular focus. Reunite with his children. With Brody. With Joni. With Shanice. No one, guards, parole officers, or fate, would stand in his way. His heart beat with the steady rhythm of resolve as he made his move, slipping past a distracted guard and into the web of corridors. By the time the alarms blared and cells clanged shut in panic, Mick had already vanished into the grey fog outside, a shadow folding into the city. Weatherfield trembled under the weight of that silence. Word reached the street in hushed whispers and gasps, spreading like cracks through glass. Lou was among the first to know. She felt it in her chest before her ears could believe the words. Mick was out. She stood motionless in her kitchen, phone still clutched in hand, trembling. Her mind whirred. The memories rushed back, the night he was taken, the screams, the blood, the cold finality of it all. She remembered Brody's face, when she told him that his father had killed a man. The betrayal, the fire, the spiral that followed. And now he was out. Somewhere. Possibly watching. Brody had not been the same since. Once a cheeky, energetic teen, he had become a closed book, restless, defiant, raw. Lou had fought to keep him safe, fought the courts, the whispers, and worst of all, his own anger. But the news that Mick had escaped was too much. Brody disappeared from school the moment the story broke. Lou drove through Weatherfield like a woman possessed, searching alleyways, parks, old haunts. Her heart clenched tighter with each unanswered phone call. She feared Brody wasn't just running, he might be searching for his father. Meanwhile, Joni was in her own quiet panic. She had just left a meeting with Sally, where they had discussed a possible placement to help distance her from the chaos of her family. Sally had been gentle, understanding, perhaps the first adult Joni had trusted in years. But the world changed before she could return home. Joni spotted the news on a pub TV. The caption was simple. Convicted murderer escapes prison. The photo was unmistakable. Her father's eyes still bore the same madness. She called Sally instantly. Within minutes, they met at the community center where Sally, now deeply alarmed, insisted Joni stay with her temporarily. It was the safest place she could think of. Joni reluctantly agreed, though her every instinct told her to run. She remembered the last time she saw Mick, how he gripped her wrists too tightly, how his voice went from calm to chaos in a blink. Joni had kept those fears quiet, bottled up, pretending she was strong for Shanice. Now it was back. Mick, meanwhile, was navigating his old world like a ghost. He slipped past streets he once knew intimately, watching from shadows as children played, dogs barked, and Weatherfield went about its oblivious routines. But his eyes weren't on the scenery. They were searching. He first found the school. Empty corridors, laughter echoing from afar, and names scratched into lockers. But he was too late. Sally had already picked Shanice up, warned by Lou. He watched from across the car park, as Sally hugged the child close and ushered her into the safety of her car. He didn't follow. Not yet. The encounter reawakened something in him, pain. His child. His blood. He thought of their baby giggles, of stories read at night, of their eyes wide with trust. And yet he had shattered all of it. But Mick didn't believe he was evil. He believed he was misunderstood. Framed by a system built to destroy men like him. They took his children from him, and now he was simply taking them back. That same night, Lou turned to the only person she believed could help, Kit. He was a beat cop once, now a private security consultant, and more importantly, a man who had stood beside her when Mick was arrested. Their shared trauma had forged a complicated bond, one stitched with guilt, respect, and unresolved tension. "He'll come for Brody," she whispered, as Kit paced her living room. "He won't stop until he's dragged him into whatever twisted version of family he thinks he still has." Kit nodded grimly. "Then we'll have to be faster." They set out at dawn, tracing Brody's digital trail. School friends, known hangouts, CCTV feeds. Kit called in favors from old contacts, and Lou, despite her fear, refused to sit still. It was a race against time. But Mick was faster. He found Brody first. It was outside an abandoned auto shop, one Brody used to visit with mates. Mick didn't approach him immediately. He watched first, from the shadows, always the shadows. The boy looked older, stronger, but still raw. Still angry. When Mick finally stepped into view, Brody's eyes went wide with a fury that was born of 1,000 sleepless nights. "What do you want?" Brody spat. "To see my son," Mick said, barely above a whisper. "You lost that right." They argued, words sharp like razors, slicing at old scars. Mick tried to reason, tried to paint himself as the man who'd been wronged. But Brody wasn't a child anymore. He saw through it. And then Kit arrived. The clash was sudden. Mick lunged first, a desperate burst of fury. Kit tackled him to the ground. Fists flew. The fight was brutal, primal. Brody screamed. Lou ran into the scene, trying to pull them apart, but then a pipe was in Mick's hand and everything turned. One sickening crack. Kit crumpled. Blood. Sirens, too late. Mick disappeared into the maze of alleyways again, vanishing like smoke. Kit was rushed to the hospital, unconscious, unresponsive. Lou held his hand at his bedside, whispering apologies, prayers, and confessions. Outside, Brody sat with his head in his hands, guilt-ridden. He had wanted to face his father, but not like this. He hadn't wanted this blood. But Weatherfield wasn't done with Mick. The corridors of Weatherfield General buzzed with urgency. Machines beeped steadily beside Kit's bed, but Lou could hear only the echo of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The stillness of his face, the bruises blooming across his skin, it shattered her. She hadn't seen him this vulnerable since the night of Mick's arrest. That night had bonded them in fear. This one in blood. Brody sat on the hospital floor just outside the ward, knees pulled to his chest. He stared at the linoleum as if it would offer some answer, some way to turn back time. He replayed the moment over and over, the pipe in Mick's hand, the look in his eyes, the way Kit collapsed. He should have stopped it. He shouldn't have gone to meet Mick at all. But guilt and regret wouldn't undo what was done. Lou stepped out, kneeling beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. "He'll come again," Brody murmured. "We won't let him," she answered, her voice shaking with both fear and conviction. Meanwhile, Mick lay low. The alleyways of Weatherfield had changed, but not so much that he couldn't find places to hide. An old storage unit near the canal became his makeshift refuge. He knew the area well, where the cameras pointed, which windows stayed dark at night, and where he could vanish when needed. He nursed his wounds with a grimace, but his mind remained fixed. He hadn't come this far to give up. His children were close. He'd seen Shanice with Sally, and he knew Joni would be nearby. He just needed the right moment. He didn't want to scare them, he told himself that repeatedly, but deep down, some darker instinct still drove him. If they wouldn't come willingly, he'd take them. Sally kept Shanice sheltered within her home, turning the place into a fortress. She alerted the police, updated school security, and cancelled any outside activities. She knew Mick wouldn't give up easily. She had worked in social care long enough to recognize the dangerous charm of a man like him. A man who could manipulate, twist, and use anyone to achieve his goal. Shanice, blissfully unaware of the storm outside, continued to draw pictures and ask when Joni could visit. Her innocence made Sally's heart ache. Joni, on the other hand, had begun to fracture under the pressure. The stress, the memories, the fear, it all overwhelmed her. She hadn't heard from Brody since the hospital, and guilt gnawed at her. She wanted to run, to escape Weatherfield entirely, but something rooted her there. Maybe it was Shanice. Maybe it was unfinished fear. Or maybe it was the need to confront the man who had haunted her life for so long. Late one evening, she slipped away from Sally's watchful eye and returned to the estate where she used to live. The flat was boarded up, windows covered with grime, but it was familiar. She sat on the steps and cried. Mick found her there. He didn't approach like a predator this time. He sat several feet away, silent, watching her until she noticed. When she did, she bolted upright, fists clenched. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. I came for you, he said quietly. For all of you. She shook her head. You ruined us. I was trying to protect us. By killing a man. By breaking everything. He reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph, creased, faded, but unmistakably of the 3 kids at a beach. She remembered the day. It was the last time they'd laughed as a family. For a moment, something flickered across her face. But it died just as quickly. I don't want your memories, she whispered. I want to forget. Footsteps behind them. Joni's eyes widened, she knew the sound. Lou. Mick, she shouted, charging toward them. He stood, ready to flee, but Joni blocked his path. No more running, she said. But he pushed past her. Lou grabbed his jacket. He threw her off, not violently, but hard enough that she stumbled. By the time she regained her footing, he was gone again. The next day, police scoured the area but found nothing. Mick had become a ghost again. Lou made the decision that had been hovering in the back of her mind for days. It was time to send the kids away. Somewhere far from Weatherfield. Somewhere Mick wouldn't find them. Brody resisted. I'm not leaving. You have to, Lou insisted. He's too close. Kit is still in hospital. You think this is over? Brody clenched his jaw. If I go, he wins. He wins if he hurts you. Or Joni. Or Shanice. We have to think like survivors now, not warriors. Reluctantly, Brody agreed. Joni too, though her goodbye with Shanice was filled with silent tears and long hugs. Sally arranged temporary guardianship with a distant relative. The goodbye at the train station was cold and wet, and Lou hugged them as if it were the last time. But Mick was watching. From a rooftop nearby, he saw them leave. Rage burned in his chest. They were taking his family away again. He couldn't let that happen. That night, he returned to the hospital. Not for Kit, but for answers. He slipped past security, dressed like a janitor. It wasn't hard. No one expected a killer to walk through the front doors. Kit remained unconscious, his breathing shallow. Mick stood beside the bed and stared. "You took everything from me," he muttered. Kit stirred slightly, groaned. Mick leaned in closer. But before anything else could happen, a nurse entered. Mick vanished out the door like a whisper. The nurse found Lou minutes later, shaken, pale. "I saw him," she said. "In Kit's room." Panic gripped Weatherfield anew. The hospital went on lockdown. Police patrolled the streets. Sally doubled security around Shanice. The town was suffocating under the weight of fear. Then came the call. A homeless man was found dead by the canal. Same build as Mick. Same clothes. The authorities suggested it was suicide. Drowned. Maybe the guilt finally caught up to him. They couldn't confirm until the coroner's report came back. But people started to breathe again. Maybe it was finally over. Lou didn't believe it. Days passed. Kit awoke, disoriented but alive. Brody and Joni adjusted to their new lives. Sally returned to her routine. But Lou watched every shadow, checked every lock twice, and never let Shanice out of sight. Then, weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address. No name. Just a child's drawing. Stick figures. A man, a woman, 3 children. And one word, written in shaky block letters. Family. Lou tore it up immediately. But her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mick was still out there. And he wasn't finished yet.